Hey, welcome back. Today we have Josh Pulsifer with Transnation Title here to talk about starting in poverty and working up to reach your full potential. Josh is one of the most authentic people I know, and he's here. He's going to share some of his tips and tricks, some of the things he struggled through, some of the books, some of the people. He's going to talk about surrounding yourself with good people. He's going to talk about really being an authentic person. Man, there's so much value he's going to bring to this conversation that I can't even really explain it here. So you're going to have to watch. Trust me, he brings massive value here, and you're really going to love it. So let's get into it. All right, welcome back. Today we have Josh Pulsifer with Transnation Title. He's going to share a little bit about his story, a little bit of his business journey, life journey, and so why don't we get started?
No, thanks, man. Thanks for having me too. I love doing stuff like this, and kind of if I can, give education to somebody, if they learn something from my story, that's all worth it, man. So
Awesome.
so I'm at Transnation Title. I'm an account executive there. I'm going to my 5th year, so time flies, man. It's crazy.
Must be having fun.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I don't feel like it's really a job because I'm just connecting with people and building relationships. That's kind of my motto. It's funny, I had Dr. Bruce Lund. I'm not sure if you know who that is,
No.
but we had him come in. He's a national coach, and we had him come in a couple days ago to teach our staff things that, you need to know. And
Yeah.
one big thing that he said is you have your mess, right? You have your mess. Everybody has a story, and just let people know that, because you don't know that person in the crowd that's going to touch and really change somebody's life. It's happened. I think all of us have a moment to where we can think back to where somebody said something where we're like, man, if I would have known that 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's really what this podcast is about. A lot of it, just teaching the person we were 2 years ago, 10 years ago, not necessarily having guests that have sold 10 million books. Just relatable,
Real
humans
life.
next door. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real life stuff. And I think the older you get, the more you realize that, and the more you take pressure off yourself and just decide it's not all about you, and not everybody's looking at you. So that's once people can get that into their heads, it's like, it just makes life so much easier. It really does.
Absolutely.
But so for my story, man, so I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan. So not the best neighborhood. I grew up in, impoverished area. I attest it to me being able to play basketball now, because it was what the thing to do out where I was from. But
Sure.
so yeah, I grew up in Muskegon. It was one choice that you decide young. I feel like in Muskegon, you can follow the. I was just talking to your staff member about. There's 2 ways really in Muskegon. You can go up or down, and you can follow the addiction and the drugs, which a lot of my, unfortunately, friends and family, that's where I grew up. That was my realm. So it didn't bother me. I'm glad I went through it, but I noticed quickly, honestly, through my grandma Tabler and my grandpa Tabler, they were, he was kind of a pastor for a church at the time when I was young. So that's one thing I think that I'm thankful for that I did. I was actually forced to go to church by my grandparents. And they took care of me. They bought all my clothes for school. They bought my shoes because my parents could never afford stuff like that. I lived with my cousin for a while. So that was the good thing about it, is she forced us into the churches where we had to read the Bible and scripts and stuff like that. And I don't know, there was always just something inside of me that said, these things that my friends and my family are doing are wrong, and I need to find my way out of that. And I used a lot of it, honestly, through just the work of, I'm a faithful guy, just through the teachings of God at a young age. And I did fall away from that and later in life, and I can kind of get into that a little bit. But so I did find, I feel like, God young enough to know the difference between really right and wrong. And for me, it was trying to build those relationships with those people that I trusted more than my own family, outside of my grandparents. So I learned at a young age, like, you have to put good people in your life in order to surround yourself in that to get you out of a situation. And I was thankful enough to get out of it. I started at Finish Line very young. I was 16 years old as just a stock boy. And
What's Finish Line?
so Finish Line's a shoe store in the mall. Yep. So, and we were just talking about brick and mortar. I don't know how much longer those are going to be around, but so yeah, I worked at Finish Line from 16 to 26. So I was there for 10 years, and I did the whole retail. I moved all over not the country, just to Indiana for a little while. Ran a really big store in Indianapolis, Indiana, Caston Square Mall. But through all of this journey, I always was so focused on making money at the time because I did get married pretty young and we had 3 little boys, at the time.
Okay.
And so my life at that moment was, and this is kind of where I strayed away from the teachings of what God taught me and what my grandparents taught me on. My focus was just money. There's no way in my mind my kids were going to grow up the way I grew up, not knowing what you're going to eat and not knowing if you're going to have enough clothes to bring to school. So I was just so focused on work at Finish Line. I was training to be a district manager. So my career was going really well for how young I was. I was only, I think, 23 or 24 at the time. And then my wife, she said, hey, I want a divorce. And I'm like, oh, and then it just hit you like a ton of bricks. Like, what did I do wrong? I felt like I was supporting my family. My kids have everything they need. I just wasn't there. So that was a big learning experience for me, having my wife leave when I was still in Indiana. And at the time, you're young and you don't realize how important family is. So my family moved back to Grand Rapids, Holland area. And when I was still running the store, because I just can't leave.
Yeah.
$5.4 million store. It was the 3rd flagship store in our company. And I was like, if I leave, I'm taking a huge step back in my career. And so I had to stay for at least a year for my lease on my apartment. But as soon as my lease was up, I told my district manager at the time, I was like, hey, I got to go back home. I was driving every weekend to see my kids because obviously I missed them. And it was tough, man. That was probably one of the toughest times of my life, having to drive that much just to see my kids for a few hours and then have to drive back. So you learn a lot from that when you're in the car. And then that's kind of when I started finding my way back into God's life and just starting to, just trying to read the Bible more and stuff like that. Came back home, and then I worked at Men's Warehouse after that because I got recruited. It was actually one of my clients.
Oh, nice.
Through Finish Line. And in my mind, it was still retail, but it was a different kind of retail from shoes to suits. So thankfully, that brought me into a different tier of clientele that I would meet. I met a lot of bankers and insurance guys and a lot of very successful people. And it got me thinking like, man, I kind of think I fit in that category a little bit better than where I came from even. So from there, I actually followed my district manager to, after that, it was, I went to Chase Bank for a hot second and I just couldn't sit behind a desk. Yeah, I was there for...
Like a teller or like a...
No, I was a relationship banker there.
Okay.
So that's where I learned a little bit about the mortgage industry because I was licensed. I had to take my Series 6, my 63. So I had to get licensed as I could sell investments and things like that. But at Chase, it's kind of weird how the role works. You're not allowed to actually sell. You're just the middleman. You pass it to whoever it has to go. So if you came in for a mortgage, I'd learn about you, figure out how much money you made, start the process, hand it to my LO. And the investment side, I could talk about investments, but I can't sell anything. And then I'd pass it to my FA and they would close on it. So weirdly weird. And honestly, from where I came from, I got not uncomfortable, but I just didn't want to talk to people about money anymore. I didn't want to ask how much was in your 401k and stuff like that. And I got kind of depressed a little bit because I was sitting behind a desk too. And I'm a guy that's got to be on the move. I don't like to just sit there. Gained a little weight while I was on that journey. And then I went from Chase Bank to Sheldon Dry Cleaners. And because my district manager from Men's Warehouse recruited me again.
Okay.
And so he was slotted to take over as CEO of the company. So I ran our whole sales division and our driver division. And I did that for about 2.5 years until a really good buddy of mine, Joe McLaren, he's actually an account executive for Transnation on the Lakeshore.
Okay.
So a really good buddy of mine, and he actually went to school with one of our original owner's daughters. And so they made that connection. And at the time, he was my assistant manager for Sheldon Cleaners. And he told me about the opportunity he had. And I was like, man, as a friend, as a boss, if you don't take this, you're an idiot, dude. You're a moron, right?
Yeah.
In my philosophy in life, I've been a manager for a long time, and you got to give people grace. And you got to, if somebody's leaving you, let them leave with grace and just really hope the best for that person. That's what I truly believe. And so I told him as a friend too, because he was going to start out making way more than he probably would ever make at Sheldon Cleaners, to be honest with you, unless he moved up, past me. So then that's how I got into Transnation Title, is just through Joe. They were looking for an account executive out this way, and I interviewed for it with my boss Mario and Becky, and that they must have loved my, my just realness and my personality, because I got the job a couple weeks later. So, and I haven't looked back since, man. It's been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the key things that kind of stood out there is like obviously relationships. You mentioned that over and over and over.
Yes.
Through the people, and that clearly led you from spot to spot, and you sort of you might have been a little parallel, but it seems like you've pretty much worked your way upward, or at least upward, even if not financially, in the direction you'd wanted to go. So what did you do to kind of learn that and build those relationships? So like what kind of led you in that direction?
Yeah. So, man, a big changing point for me, honestly, this was probably, man, 6 or 7. Nope, it's got so 6 years ago. I remember my little guy was a baby at the time, and we were going to church at Lake Odessa. My branch manager, Landon Mendez, invited me to church one day with him. So I was like, yeah, because we actually didn't find a church that we liked. My wife and I, we had a hard time finding what we really wanted out of a church. And church was perfect at the moment for us. So we were going to this church for a few months, and then I was able to basically give my testimony in front of people and tell them really my struggles in life and how I grew up. And, I didn't have a dad, and the addiction, like there's some crazy stuff. And I feel like everybody has a story, and everybody has a memory of something that happened to them as a kid that's traumatic. And mine was, I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, and I remember the ice cream man coming down the road, and I was eating a strawberry ice cream, strawberry shortcake ice cream. They're my favorite still, man. And I remember my real dad at the time, which I don't know him now that much.
Yeah.
He still maybe calls me and my sister like once every like 5 or 6 years, but just a weird relationship. But he handed me a joint that young, and I remember smoking a joint when I'm that young, and like for that to be burned into my memory, it's crazy. But for a kid to grow up like that and overcome the things that I have, I feel like just something was watching over me. But just that's one of the many stories that I have that. So I'm telling my testimony to church about all these things, and after I did it, it was just, man, the biggest weight was lifted off of my shoulders, and I felt like I gained so much confidence in that, and I didn't have to feel ashamed anymore.
Yeah.
Because I kind of just let it all out. And man, I think once people are able to do that and not have judgment on anyone, for one, and not feel judgment, because it's not about me. People aren't going to judge you. They're going to look at you, and either, they're like you or not. And that's in business. That's why people work with us. And so after I did that, man, that was the biggest moment of my life, to become more confident in who I was, and the past is the past. And the more you look to the future and have strong relationships, and that's what life's about, man. And I tell my wife this all the time. And when you see us out together, we actually got a really good compliment from 2 different lenders that were with us. And we were out to dinner, and she was like, you can tell that you guys absolutely love each other and you respect each other, because the lenders know me really well, obviously, for work events and stuff like that. And now they've got to know my wife just through drinks and dinner and stuff. But they said to us the other night, like, how great our relationship is. And I was like, you're right. And it's like, you really got to find that partner that's with you. And it's like, I love showing my video of when I got married and how I proposed to people, because it shows who I am, and I'm still that person. And that's, what life's about, man. That's why I love doing stuff like this.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's
like,
great.
It sounds like we have some similarities in our background, in terms of, growing up in a similar atmosphere. Mine was a little more real, or a little more rural.
Yeah.
But a lot of similar stuff. A dad that was, like a biological father is what I call him, that was absent and left early. But the other thing is that I've had a similar, hey, that weight's gone when you can kind of give that up, and all the guilt and the baggage, and just move forward with who you are and not worry about what other people think. Like that, I had the hugest growth spurt in life. So I definitely think that's a takeaway from this conversation, is being able to get to that point.
And you're right. And then once you open up, people want to open up.
Yes.
It's natural for humans to do that. And once they feel comfortable, like, dude, nobody's perfect. Nobody grows up with a pitch I actually know one guy that's kind of spoon fed, but most people have such traumatic experience, and nobody thinks that about anybody else. Like, because you see people so put together, like you do. And like, if you even look at our life now, and I will say, yeah, like my wife and I have a very put together life, but we work so hard at it. You know, we actually, I joke about it because we do what's called a Sunday progress report. And that's every Sunday we sit down, we go over our values, our goals, we go over like the dinner plan and like, how did we connect with each kid this week? So we do that every week because it stays top of mind. And the funny part about that was when Dr. Bruce was teaching our account executives like what to do on the business world of it, I was like, I'm going to take it a step further, Dr. Bruce, because he's not married, he doesn't have kids, so he can't. I feel like unless you have that, you can't speak a coach mentality to me. Like, it doesn't resonate with me because you don't have that, and it's your program works for you because you don't have any obligations to anybody, you know. But for me, I was like, you guys, this is, and I said this in front of my class, and I was like, this is absolutely great material. But I was like, but if you don't have a plan on your personal life that matches your business life, this means honestly shit. It's not going to do anything for you. If you don't have your personal stuff intact, you're not going to have the other stuff intact. And so I was explaining to them, you got to make sure you're on the same page with your kids and your spouse, and try to be, and it's hard, man. It's not easy. Trust me. Like I was telling her, my 19-year-old son just dropped out of college, 6 weeks left to graduating. And
oh man,
he gave me his not excuses, but his what he was feeling. And I totally like get it. And I agree with him, and I'm on a plane with him. I'm not, I'm not going to judge him. I said, I'm going to, be with you, whatever you choose, man. But just knowing that you have that life of your personal stuff feels like it's together, and the more confident I think you are in that, the better the business side of it works too, man. Because I'm a firm believer you got to have both sides of it intact. And being in real estate for you, I mean, that's part of your life anyway. That's molded together because you got to be available, when people aren't, and that's typically after hours, weekends, and stuff. So
yeah, you have to. I mean, that's definitely, the intentionality is important. And I've not been that intentional, but I've been intentional in the sense that, hey, I make all my kids' events there when they need me to be there, and I can work around, the kids' activities and the family activities. That's a priority. Showing a house if I have to show it an hour or two later,
for sure,
or hire somebody else to show it in order to make an event. That it's always been a priority,
and that's so great.
Intentionality is huge, and then it kind of comes back to, you have to take care of your own house first before you can help somebody else take care of theirs. And then, relating it to, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help your kid put theirs on. If you're passed out and unable to take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
True.
So I think that's another valuable takeaway from here.
And the older you get, I feel like you live, and I'm not that old. I'm going to be 40 this year, and but I feel like it's like you really start to see the world differently, and the more you realize like it is really about connecting with people and building real relationships. It's funny because I did give a little speech for the MMLA this year. I'm the president of our chapter this year.
What's and MMLA,
the Michigan Mortgage Lender Association.
Okay.
And but it's funny because I literally in my speech I'm like, and this is before I heard Dr. Lund speak about it, but he's like, we really just need to get back to basics and really just start treating people like the golden rule, like you want to be treated. As cliche as that sounds, and it's true though. That's what it is.
It's sort of everything boils down to that. Everything in life, I think, and that's makes it so much easier to make relationships. It's like it's kind of easy, like nothing. It's not easy maybe, but it is simple. It's people are attracted to people that are authentic. This sort of seems like a trope from the past few years about being authentic, but like you got to be vulnerable and humble, and be genuinely interested in other people, because people's BS detectors are so good these days.
They are.
That even if you're trying, like you can just smoke that out like really easily in somebody, and then people like don't want anything to do with that.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like you're right. Like the vulnerability, I don't know, it just kind of went away for a while. Nobody wanted to be vulnerable with each other. I think the more you expose yourself about stuff that's real and honest, the more you're going to realize like you're going to connect better with other people because they're going to feel that certain way about something that happened to you,
Right.
And I feel like too, in the business sense, you have to have emotional intelligence, man. You have to be able to look at people, read them, see, there's difference between sympathy and empathy. It's like you either feel really sorry and you kind of feel with them, or you just feel sorry for them. There's a big difference between that, man. And I feel like the more you become more empathetic to people, man, just the stronger bonds and the relationships you're going to build with people, because then you're going to be that person that they feel comfortable with sharing if they're going to think about something bad, or, it's really about how you can help other people, man, and just be a mentor. Coming from a mentee, I believe everybody needs a mentor in their life. Somebody that's a little bit older than them. Mine's a guy named Bruce Bush, which I was just telling you about. Like, he's a good mentor of mine. He just taught me a lot of life lessons, and he's in his 70s. And I feel like you got to have somebody like that in your life to hopefully learn from. That way you can pass his stuff down to somebody, it's because it's real stuff. They lived.
I think the more experienced you are, the more you'll realize, and actually the more successful you are, the more you realize how unsuccessful you are, the more you need to know. It's pretty humbling.
It is.
It's like I'm like, I have a certain level of success, but I need a coach or something to take me to that next level from a business standpoint, especially in particularly right now. And so that's been something that I've had the same conversation with several people, and there's to some extent a lack of that or difficulty finding that. I think, they say you're the average maybe of the 5 people you hang around most.
Yep.
And I don't know if that was Jim Rohn or somebody else, but it doesn't matter. I've also heard some other things where, hey, I've been a mentor the past few years, really enjoyed it. So you kind of got a hand, I don't know if it's Jocko or somebody else, you got to generally have a hand down. And this might have been a military thing. You got a hand down, and then you got, your arms around the people that kind of at your level, and then you got a hand up for somebody, to help you. So you kind of got to,
both.
It's both. You got to help, I think Gary Vaynerchuk kind of calls it, it's little clouds and dirt in a sense, and maybe in a different frame, but I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is. And it's important too, to tell that person too, like, hey man, I so appreciate what you do for me and your help. Like, I tell the guy I love him. I love you and Jamie. Like, you guys are amazing. And thank you for taking the time to come into my life and my family and teach me these things. And one thing that is kind of full circle, because with Joe McLaren and our Lakeshore guy, he came up to, and he's told me numerous times, like, hey man, like, I would not be where I am today if I didn't learn the life lessons that I learned from you back when we worked at Men's Warehouse together, and it was things that I taught him about just customers, like, hey, be yourself, be original. Like, don't put up, if something doesn't look on a guy, tell him the truth about it. Like, you have to be honest and you have to have ethics. So I, kind of taught him what I learned from my sales journey. And to this day, he, sometimes he makes me emotional when he comes at me, and I'm like, dude, thank you, because it is good to know that what I'm teaching him is working, and I still am trying to coach. He's 9 years younger than me, and he's just now having kids and this kind of stuff. So I'm still hopefully molding and working his life into, like, just to be a better man, person, father, which he's great already. So, but it's just cool to know that the things that I'm learning obviously are getting passed down to a younger generation that hopefully will keep trickling down. And that's what it's about, man. And like I said, the people are going to think it's cliche, but it's not. Once you understand that part of it, it really isn't. It's really a different mindset,
Yeah, 100%. I kind of want to dig into a little bit of that sympathy versus empathy thing. Yeah. Because empathy, as I see it, how you explained it, empathy, in my experience, is more of a taking on someone else's burden, like sharing in that burden, where the sympathy is just, like you said, feeling bad for somebody, but you sort of move on. It's an external thing. And I think people really sense the connection when you're truly empathetic, and you generally looking for ways to help, even if it's just a kind word or a smile.
That's exactly it, man. And you hit it on the dot. Like, the empathy for a person, you're sharing that emotion with them. You truly understand what they're going through, because you can think of a situation that's happened to you that's similar to them, that's going to put you in that mind frame. And I think people can feel that. I'm such a big proponent. Everything's connected, man. Like, whether it's Mother Earth or like every human, like, we need trees and mushrooms and plants, and like, we're all one. And it's kind of corny, but like,
I think it's great.
It's what I believe. Like, I take my shoes off every day and I go in the grass. Yeah. My wife and I, when we go hiking, I'm not kidding, we literally just touch a tree and just feel that connection, because I feel like that's what we are, man. We're all just pieces of this planet that are trying to coexist together. And you know, I can't remember who it was, but I heard a story where it said, you know, God said that man can basically have the earth, but we took that wrong. We took it as we're going to do whatever we want with this earth, whether it's farming or whatever, but not realizing we have to take care of it too, and kind of work with it and not against it. And I think that's just another level of, you know, things that I want to experience in life. Like I want to try ayahuasca, bro. I want to go do an ayahuasca
I know
tour.
what you mean.
So,
There's a part of me that definitely wants to
yeah.
figure out that in the right
Mhm.
setting.
Yep, in the right setting. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is a doctor, and he did it
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and he said it changed his life. And I think
I've heard
it
that
did.
over and over
It did.
from people. Now I've heard that there were some bad stories,
Mm-hmm.
people that tried to do it on their own
Yep.
or not in the right
Yep.
setting.
Nope.
Um,
So for this one, it's in Peru, and you have to go 30 days completely clean eating, completely clean everything, no drugs, no alcohol. You go there, you're with a shaman, they do the whole journey with you. You're not allowed to drink or anything like, so it's very like real. And yeah, he had a great experience. His wife though didn't. So she doesn't
Okay.
want to do it again because it brought back too much trauma from her
Yeah.
past, because that's essentially what it does. And
right.
so I think there's something there, because obviously the way I grew up, I have a lot of childhood trauma that I'm not saying that I haven't dealt with it, because I have.
Sure.
I just want to see if there's something more than that, because
Yeah.
I think there is.
Kind of the same thing. You know, I feel like I've overcome a lot of that,
Mhm.
put a lot of it in my past, but you don't really know if there's something still bubbling. And I don't even know if it has to do with that, of just something like one more loose end they got to snip, like pruning the
Mhm.
vine. Like maybe there's something else that needs to be
It's true.
addressed.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
I know it is. It is. But back to the sympathy, empathy thing, like that's a growth though. That's a growing experience that you just have to realize on yourself. And you'll notice a change in yourself once you do make that flip from I feel sorry for these people to so it's funny I say that, because like a lot of people would say like tribal communities, like they feel sorry for them because they live in. I was like, no, man, these people are, in my mind, they're living. What did they all have in common? Community, family. They all have some certain trade that they like a gift that they give to their people, and they all walk. And so it's huge, man. There's something to that.
Definitely something. I think we've gotten a long way away from that in many cases. We forget, another lender friend made a joke about, hey, having a party, getting people together so we can all look at each other's phone at our phones.
That's
Watch
true.
everybody look at their phones.
Yeah.
And
It consumes people.
it does.
Yeah.
I do miss that time, because as a kid, especially growing up in a poor situation,
Mhm.
like your friends in the neighborhood, or even your book or your boxes or whatever, like you were definitely way closer to nature
For sure.
and doing stuff outside.
That's all I did.
You didn't have
No.
anything else. And to have that feeling again, like I do miss some of that.
Me too.
It's hard, even the hard times, where like you don't miss the hard parts so much, but you remember the good.
You're
the
right.
good experiences.
You're right. Yeah, because at one point in my life, we lived in a trailer park, and we literally every single street road had a basketball team that we'd go play at the park. We'd have hockey leagues. We'd go play baseball. Like we did almost every sport just in this tiny little
Oh yeah,
square patch that we had to call a yard that we all shared.
man. The great memories.
Yeah.
Like our football field was a yard about the size of this room.
Mm-hmm.
The all-time quarterback,
Ours
4
was
downs to get
too.
there.
Yep. 4 downs. Yep.
You got a crooked basketball,
Yep.
hoop up there that you battled on.
Yep, I was my first dunk at that park. It's because it was bent down a little
Nice.
bit. But yeah, that's funny, man. Yeah, sounds like we grew up pretty similar, man.
Yeah,
Crazy.
good stuff though. Like I think that all forms us, and I think from people listening too, I think this probably relates to a lot of other people. We're not the only people that had challenging upbringings, and even if you had a silver spoon or a middle class, upper middle income, you still went through stuff. Like everybody has their stuff, everybody has their baggage.
Yep.
And so it's like, it doesn't matter. And that's really, I want to be able to share some of this stuff with people and allow them to connect if they haven't already with, similar stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it, man. That's why when you asked me, I'm like, yeah, man, I would love it. I'd love to do stuff like this and just open up and just people know who you are. And then, you get friends out of it. You get really deep relationships. You get business. It's a full circle thing, man. So.
So maybe let's pivot real quick into, are there any good books or podcasts you'd recommend you listen to lately or you
Man,
given?
so one of my big books that I liked was, I think it was by Zhang, Rejection Proof. John C. Maxwell is a great author too. I like anything by him's
Mm-hmm.
great, but Zhang, man, Rejection Proof was awesome. It's this, he was a, I can't remember what country he came from, but I think he was an exchange student. And he, man, his story of rejection, he was so afraid of rejection that he finally decided to tell himself, all right, I'm just going to ask for crazy things to crazy people to feel the
Mm-hmm.
rejection, to kind of get used to it. And he blogged about it. He blogged every story, and he became very, very lucrative author and because of it. And man, that you got to read that book. That
You'll have to
resonated with me.
I'll have to get that info from you.
Yeah.
Or listen again. I've never heard of that one at all. It's
a
an
good
interesting
book.
one.
What about you?
It is something I share a lot though. Like it's something I teach in my mentees and just love to share with people is that whole fear setting, talking to the person. I had an Amway business back in the day, right out of college, and I learned so much just from being able to go out of my comfort zone and talk to people, show the plant, some stranger. I didn't stick around in that business a lot, but that's one of the biggest lessons I learned is getting out of your comfort zone to talk to people, face that rejection, because there's plenty of that.
There is for sure. And his big thing was, and I think this is another book too, the anxiety you get that's you growing as a person. So I teach a lot of CE classes too for my job now, and I still get nervous, really nervous, but I'm like, I use that nervous energy, take a breath and use it into my presentation. And I kind of crave that feeling because it's like almost like a natural high of this is me talking in front of 30, 50, 40 agents, and lenders, and, they're all professional, and you got to be up and you got to be on. But what I really found out was the more you're yourself, then the easier it is. Like the last presentation I gave, I was up until about 3 a.m. because I accidentally deleted some of my PowerPoint slides and I had to redo them. And I was in my presentation. I noticed that I had the same slide up there like 3 times, and I click on it, and I'm like, let me tell you what happened. Then I told them like, hey, I was doing it, and then I saved it, and it didn't save, and then so this whole story. But I was being real on stage, and I got so many compliments after that class, just to how great the class was. And I don't even think it was a survey class, like learning boundaries and surveys. Like, nobody, what is that? So
people remember that story though, and that connects people. I think it doesn't matter what you say. In a sense, it's how you say it or how they connect with it.
That's true, man. Cool though.
Cool, great. I'll have to check that book out for sure.
Yeah.
Is there an audiobook version?
I only do audiobook.
I'll only do audio anymore
I drive
too.
So much, I just usually throw a book on. Podcasts, I do like to listen to some of Joe Rogan's episodes, just because, man, it's one of the only podcasts really where you have both sides on all the time to see different points of views and different things. And I love the fact that he questions them, really good questions. And I love the doctors on there because they get into detail.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much about health from his podcast, you guys, like that you don't know about until you actually do your own research on it. So I would say that too, like I make my own bread and stuff now. We eat, just basically try to stay as healthy as we can on that side of it, just because what's pumped into our foods.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I love Rogan stuff too for the same reason. So I never cared that much. I always thought it was all UFC.
Me too.
And comedy type stuff. But he's actually, maybe he's just grown or broadened that over the years. But yeah, tons of great guests and some.
Like I follow Huberman now because of it. Yeah. My wife actually went to Jordan Peterson too the other night too, which she loved that. But yeah, those are the kind of things that I try to put in my mind because for me they're not. There's really nothing negative. You're just learning information and that's so useful. I
think there's 2 more things that I'd say would be takeaways here too. Is one. Self-improvement, self-education, continuing to do that. And then curiosity sort of kind of goes along with that.
Yeah.
Most of the successful people I know, whether financially or just in any part of life, are curious people.
Very curious. And that's what I love because I feel like he is genuinely curious. And so am I.
Yeah.
I would love to do what he does just to get all these professions and all these fields in here. And I was like, this is some cool stuff, man. Like Ancient Apocalypse. Like,
oh man, I love that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude, that was like, what? That was wild. I was like, you guys got to watch this. Everybody's got to watch that show. It's amazing. Yeah.
Loved it.
Just opens up your mind to a lot more stuff, which is great. Because like you said, growing up, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was 17.
Yeah.
So it's like, we didn't know what was going on outside.
20 something. So, but I'm 10 years older.
Yeah. Yeah. So it makes sense. Yeah. Oh man. The old T9s. Having to text through a T9.
Yeah, we had bag phones back in the day.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a bag phone. We didn't have money till my first flip phone in college when I moved to Los Angeles. So
wow, that's
or
crazy.
after college, sorry, my first job.
Crazy, man. Yeah.
But yeah, all good stuff. Yeah, I guess if you were talking to somebody coming into like the professional world, maybe getting out of college, you've already shared a lot, but what would what's kind of the biggest piece of advice?
Yeah, man. Honestly, you got to be able to articulate yourself to somebody, because you realistically, it's funny because speaking of Amway, John Crow, you have to be able to sell yourself to people you do. And I think the best way of doing that is to be yourself and genuine. That's why I didn't write a script today. I was like, I don't want to write a script because it's not what I'm feeling at the moment. Wherever the conversation takes us, that's where it's going to take us. And I think the more people realize that, because I used to interview people coming into Finish Line or coming into Men's Warehouse, and man, you could really tell. The first question I would just say is, hey, tell me about yourself. Like, just tell me about yourself. And if they didn't have an answer for that, like, that just tells you that they're not emotionally ready for a job, really.
Yeah.
And I would say that for kids that coming out of college and trying to get in the workforce, like, the more that you are asked questions, you're not afraid to approach anybody. And use your elders, use your people in your company, use your peers, like, ask them the questions that you don't know. Like, that's one thing that I learned even in a title is like, it is such a complicated world. I don't know everything, but I got a bunch of experts that know a lot, which is great to have in your back pocket. That's what you need to realize. And I was at a young commercial event, and there's a bunch of young agents there that are very successful. And that was their number one thing. They said, I would ask my broker all these questions, and the guys that did that felt like they succeeded, and the guys that didn't kind of just fell behind.
I've noticed that too. Ask more questions. People get farther along faster.
Yep. So ask for help when needed. Make mistakes. Another great book is Failing Forward, man. You have to fail forward. You have to fail in life. That's how you learn. That's how you pick yourself up. And there was actually a doctor on Rogan too about therapy for kids. She's like, unless there's a traumatic experience that they're dealing with at the moment, like, she doesn't believe that an 18-year-old should be going to a therapist because he has a little anxiety. That's part of life.
Sure.
That's a learning experience. Because she said, when you have moments of severe anxiety, that's going to burn a memory, and you're going to mold yourself around that. Hence the fact that I remember that when I was a young boy, like, that anxiety that you felt there is a good thing, because then you teach you how to become a better person, in a sense, if that makes sense. Like, what would be a life with no anxiety because you are taking a pill? And I know some people do need it. I'm not taking that away from anybody, because some people really do need some assistance. But like, the true root of it is like, I want to feel all my emotions. I've never been a person to take like all these medications and drugs and stuff. It just wasn't part of what, like, even when I hurt my knee and stuff, I didn't want to take the opioids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I try to stay as natural as I can, but it's because of all of that. You gotta stay strong in your mind and feel the hurt and feel the pain. It's part of life. That's what it is, And nothing's perfect.
Yeah, I think we've gotten away from some of that too. Just truly experiencing those and then learning from that. I do see value in whether it's therapy or counseling or having somebody that works as maybe a mentor or teaching you some of those skills to deal with it yourself.
That's
and not relying on that. Like, but I definitely think there's some value in having somebody.
And I do agree with that 100%. The point I think she was trying to make is that talking about something negative over and over and over again to somebody isn't making that better. You got to find ways to like get past those. And those are the types of therapists and stuff that are great. That's awesome. Those are the good ones. And she was talking about a lot of the ones that just keep it up, keep bringing it up. And then it's every time you think about it, that's traumatic.
Oh, yeah. You become the victim.
Yeah.
Constantly. It becomes part of your identity.
Yep. And then
what you think about.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, man, about all that kind of stuff too. It is.
Well, this has been great. Anything else you want to share?
Great. Man. Yeah, I feel like we've had a good session here, man.
Packed a lot in.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I could talk all day, but yeah.
Yeah, nutrient dense. Well, maybe another time.
Yeah, for sure. we have to hopefully get some listeners, and we'll do it again.
Yeah. So you sell title insurance, or I mean, essentially.
Yep.
And so you work with agents and brokerages.
Yep.
And you help educate people on that.
Yes, sir.
And so how, like, from that sense, how can people reach you?
Oh man, everybody has my cell phone number. You can look it up on our website, but it's 616-410-0515. I'm a texter, so I like texting, but I do like to call. You just get it, to have a quick conversation.
Yeah.
But that's how people can get a hold of me. But my main office is right downtown, but I go everywhere. I cover all the way from Kalamazoo to Newaygo, so anywhere in that area.
Great.
Yep.
Well, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.